So this is the Trump wall right here. You can tell the Trump wall because it has that metal barrier on the top. Now this has always been the entranceway. They were building the rest of this wall, but when Biden took office and he put a stop to border wall construction, they left it open. And people are running in there all times of the day and night.
Keeping our republic is on the line, and it requires patriots with great passion, dedication, and eternal vigilance to preserve our freedoms. Jenny Beth Martin is the co-founder of Tea Party Patriots. She is an author, a filmmaker, and one of Time Magazine's most influential people in the world. But the title she is most proud of is mom to her boy-girl twins. She has been at the forefront, fighting to protect America's core principles for more than a decade. Welcome to the Jenny Beth Show.
Today's episode of the Jenny Beth Show is a special one. During our travels on the southern border, we met up with the spokesman for the National Border Patrol Council, Chris Cabrera, who gave us a tour of the border near McAllen, Texas. If you are listening to this episode on one of the podcast platforms, I recommend visiting jennybethshow.com to find links to the different video options so you can get the full experience. And now, join me as Chris Cabrera takes us to the southern border. Where are we going today right now, Chris?
Right now we're gonna go hit some spots. One spot is a popular, we can't get down right to the river, but we're gonna go to an area that's frequently used by people turning themselves in. We're gonna go to some gaps in the wall and then maybe try and sneak down to the river.
Okay, and we're in McAllen right now?
Yeah, we're in McAllen, which is, well, it was the busiest station in the Border Patrol. It kind of fluctuates between us and Del Rio, but it is the home of the largest Border Patrol station in the United States.
And it's about 3.5 hours south of San Antonio.
Yeah,
Texas.
we're about 3 hours south of San Antonio and about an hour inland from the point of Texas.
So you've been with Border Patrol for 22 years. The last time that we were here, we kind of talked off the record, and one of the things you were saying back then, you were showing me some photos of what was happening on the bridge coming into the country and then underneath the country and away, under the bridge and then away from the ports of entry. So what's happening today?
Well, what Border Patrol, what we always deal with is between the ports of entry, the illegal entries. And for quite some time now, the majority of traffic is coming illegally, obviously, between the ports of entry. It's actually easier for people to cross into the country illegally than it is legally. Even with asylum seekers, you have asylum seekers that are looking to come in, and the bridge is only taking X amount of people per day, and they say, well, we can't handle any more, so you're gonna have to wait. With Border Patrol, we don't have a no vacancy sign. So whoever comes in, we have to deal with them, we have to take it. And they know that, they know it's gonna overcrowd us, and they push these people to get us overcrowded, get our manpower number stretched thin, and then they continue to cross the drugs and the high value, what they consider high value crossers, people that don't want to get caught. And if we don't have the manpower to keep up with people that are turning themselves in, what shot do we have at the ones that are running?
Right. What kind of changes have you seen in what's happening at the border since Title 42 expired, and then between this presidential administration and the previous one, so between Biden and Trump?
Well, between Biden and Trump, it was when President Trump left office, things were as controlled as I've seen them in the last 10 or 15 years. Slower crossings, slower rate of crossings. People were getting sent back to Mexico, whether or not they were from Mexico, which I had never seen that before. And we were able to concentrate on the people that were trying to avoid detection. When President Biden came in, the floodgates just opened, and our numbers doubled, tripled, quadrupled monthly. So they took Title 42, they took the Remain in Mexico program away, then they put it back in, but only part way, and we saw the numbers jump sky high. Now with Title 42 ending, it's slowed somewhat. It has slowed quite a bit, but it's kind of like a cauldron. It's just it's bubbling. We can see thousands of people on the south side. We see mass numbers of Venezuelans and Colombians. If you go down to the Brownsville at the bank, you just see encampments everywhere you look. Reynosa, you can see the same thing with the Haitians over there. So they're coming across at some point. We don't know when. The theory is that nobody really knows what's going to happen here in the near future, and I think they're just waiting to see if people get released, if they don't get released. And I mean, for years now, different Homeland Security secretaries have made trips to Central and South America saying, don't come. If you come, we'll send you back. And that's always been said. But people, what they listen to are their family and friends, their relatives. So the ones that make the trip here, if they get released and call back home or send messages back home, that's what's going to activate this. And make no mistake, if you walk here from Guatemala and you see me standing on the riverbank, you're not turning around, you're just waiting. And that's somewhere where you walked from. Imagine if you came from Haiti or China or India or Bangladesh. I mean, you're not just going to turn around and go home, you've already paid. So I think they're coming, we just don't know when, we don't know where, but you can feel that there's like this tension when you get down there that something's going to happen soon.
When you and I first met back in 2014, one of the things that you said then, and you said since then to me several different times, is that what we need to do is enforce the law. And when we enforce the law, the message gets out and people stop trying to come across illegally. Would you elaborate on that for people who maybe haven't heard this theory of law enforcement before?
Yeah, you know, people made this big deal about, well, we're going to be enforcing Title VIII laws now that Title 42's gone away. Well, Title VIII's always been there. We should have been enforcing that thing all along. I mean, it never went away. It's been on since I joined the patrol, and it'll be here long after. So it just seems odd that people are propping up this new law enforcement action that we're doing is something new when it's always been there. The other thing is with anchor babies, we have not necessarily birthright citizenship, but we'll have a kid that comes over unaccompanied, and their parents are already here in the United States, and then they let the kid has an asylum claim, so the kid's pending a claim, and they let the kid stay with the parent who is here illegally, and the parent is supposed to be the anchor, not the child. But yet the way we're doing things is we're letting the child anchor the parent here. We're doing things backwards. We're coming up with new ways to grant asylum for people, whether it's abused housewives, which is, you know, it's a despicable thing, and I don't agree with that, you know, at all, but it's not necessarily an asylum claim. Living in a bad neighborhood is not an asylum claim. Being LGBTQ is not an asylum claim. And I even heard, I read something in the news a couple weeks ago, they were trying to say limited English made you a vulnerable citizen, therefore you would get paroled into the country if it passed. And I mean, that only excludes like 4 or 5 countries globally. Wow. You know, so hopefully that doesn't go through, but they're trying to make it easier to circumvent the law, and we're putting policy above law, which last time I checked is not the way things worked. No. It's
not supposed to work that way. I guess that's how it's functioning right now, but it's not working.
No, it's not. You know, our numbers have dropped since Title 42 went away, and you know, part of that is, I mean, it's a good thing the numbers dropped. We don't know when it's going to pick back up, but people are touting this, the numbers dropped. Well, they did drop somewhat, but they're not back to where they should be. And just because you're better than bad, that doesn't make it good. Okay. And I think that's what they're saying. Look, we've made a, you know, we there's a 12-foot flood and now it's only 8. Well, we're still 8 feet below water. You know, right. That's not necessarily a good thing. So it's better, but it's not good.
Why have the numbers dropped since Title 42?
Well, people just don't know what's going to happen with these new programs. People don't know. We don't know. They don't know. Nobody knows. But what we do know is nobody's turned around and went home, because we still see them there.
Right. What are some of the things you have seen at the border that just stand out in your mind, whether it's recently or in the years you've worked for Border Patrol?
I think the majority that that hits me the hardest is anything to do with children, whether it's kids that are unaccompanied, kids that are telling stories that how they traveled through Mexico and the other countries unaccompanied. We had a young girl about 6-8 months ago, 13 years old, and she walked up, turned herself in, and all she did was she just handed us her birth certificate and just cried the entire time. Couldn't get a word out of her, and Lord knows what happened to that poor young girl. And we were there with her about an hour and a half until the bus came, and we got her back into the station and got her to the hospital. But Lord can only imagine what happened to her. We find a lot of dead bodies, unfortunately, but every now and then we'll find children. We've had kids pass right in front of us, heat stroke. We've had a lot of it. I think one that sticks with me the most is when I was working on boats. There was a young girl that was missing. She had drowned, or they thought she had drowned. We couldn't find her, and so we were out there searching the river for a couple days. And you always hear that they're gonna drag the river, right? So I always thought, it's like some kind of net or something. I didn't know what it was. Well, and I don't know how it's done, but I know in Mexico it might be done a little different. But they had a gaff, like a stick with a hook on it, and they were just dragging the bottom of this river, and they pulled her up, and that just really hit me, that this was a little girl. This wasn't a grown woman who decided to do this. It was a little girl. You see stuff that happens to adults, and it's sad, but they're adults. They made their decision, they made their choice. But kids, for a kid to come across, a 7-year-old girl to come across unaccompanied in care of a smuggler, that's not, but for the grace of God, I was born here and not over there, right? And had I been born over there and I wanted to come here, I'd come. You're not going to tell me otherwise. I'll go where I want to go, right? And if my kid had to come, the only person that kid's coming with is me. I don't care who I know, or brother, father, sister, uncle. No, this is my kid, and there's nobody more qualified to care for that kid than me. But for the parent to come first and the kid to follow, that's just unacceptable. That just doesn't fly in my book. You can't send a kid down here by themselves.
How did it make you feel when you saw that happen to you?
No, it's just a shock. You don't even, it doesn't even seem real at the time. You're seeing it, but you can't believe what you're seeing, and you're just looking at it like, what is this? And it doesn't make sense, even though you're seeing it.
What is it about our policies that are encouraging parents to come and then the children to come later, or for children to come alone? When
Title 42 was in place with the Remain in Mexico under President Trump, everybody went back. Everybody. Man, woman, child, family, everybody. Then President Biden ended Title 42, Remain in Mexico. He just flat out canceled it. A couple days later, they had to put it back in place, or maybe a week or so. Well, Mexico said, well, hold up there. This is our country that they're remaining in, and we're going to pick who comes back. So they made the decision that if you're a family unit and you have a child 6 or under, you do not go back to Mexico. They don't want them that young. But if you have a child and your youngest is 7 or over, then they will take those people back into Mexico. So if you had a 7-year-old child and you got caught, you're going back to Mexico. So the parent would come ahead and then send the 7-year-old by themselves. And the craziest part is, we're giving you that child back at the end of this. You're going to send this child in care of a smuggler 3 countries on top of a train, and we're going to give them back to you? I can't leave my kid in an air-conditioned car outside of Walmart for 5 minutes to run in and get some milk, but you can put yours on top of a train, and not only we'll give them back to you, we will take them to your doorstep. We'll complete the smuggling process for you. That's what blows my mind. I can't understand why anybody, and I guess it's money, but child services doesn't get involved and say, look, you know what, if you're going to do this, you're forfeiting your right to that child. I know nothing's that simple, but it's at least an idea to start building on.
Right. Did you think that remain in Mexico under Trump, man, woman, child, no matter what, was a better policy?
It worked because it was a deterrent.
And it kept families together instead of splitting them up.
Yeah, and not only that, people, it wasn't splitting up families because people weren't coming. They said, you know what, we're not coming as long as this is in play. And then we went ahead and, it's a new administration. It's their ball game. Their ball, their game. Make the rules however they want. But if you're gonna, it's like if you're changing oil in your car, right? You need a bucket. So if you're gonna make some changes, you gotta account for what's the result of those changes are. But these guys didn't have a bucket. They said, we're changing it. Okay, it's your game. Change what you want to change. But what are you changing it to? And they didn't change it to anything. They just removed it. And there was nowhere to catch the overflow. And that's where it all went wrong. We have a big problem with gotaways, right? Right. So there's a chain link fence up here that's attached to a Catholic school. And in that, the brush inside it is super, super thick. But in that chain link fence, this is not barbed wire, this is chain link, and there's holes literally every 20 feet. Huge holes that it's doesn't even make sense to patch it up because there's just another one 10, 15, 20 feet away. And I think that right there speaks volumes to what we're dealing with as far as the gotaway traffic. Right. Here's some of those. There's one of those holes right there. Okay. So this hole is, people come up through these trails in here, and it is super, super thick in here. I mean, it is like to the point where you can't walk through without getting scraped and scratched up. There's a ton of ticks in here also that get you. Also, it's snake breeding season. And you'll see one of these every maybe 20, 30 feet. Now this, you gotta kind of ignore this. These are ours. These are flex cuffs. The reason that's there is not too long ago we had somebody that got hurt. One of the illegals got hurt. We had to bring him out on a stretcher, on a backboard. So we pinned it open with, we pinned it open so that we could get him out. Yeah.
So then how far are we from Mexico right here?
Right here, about a mile. You got about a half mile of this. Then you have a little canal, and then you have another half mile of worse than this, and then you have the water. But if you walk down here, even walking down this way, you'll see even in the brushy areas, you'll see big openings like this. And if it was just one or two, it would be easy because we could just wait up here, mirror where the hole's at and then wait for them to come across. But there's so many. I mean, you'd have to station 40, 50 agents out here. I mean, they're everywhere. And this is a chain link fence. This is a lot harder to get through than say like a barbed wire or like a goat fence, a pen fence, those you can just snip them or go over the top. This is a lot harder, but they managed to do it. And at first we would patch them up, but it got to the point where you might as well just build a new fence. But it goes all the way down that way. And this is really, really thick brush.
It's they have to go through half a mile of this, and then it's another half a mile that's even thicker than this. It's like a jungle almost.
Yeah, it's real thick in there. There's almost everything is a thorn bush, and if it's not a thorn bush, we call it a wait a minute vine because it grabs you and you have to wait a minute to untangle yourself. Not to mention the bees that are in there, and this time of year the rattlesnake mating season. So that's always and then the brush gets so high in places that even if you think you're going straight south or straight north or east or west, you always end up angling around. So what you would think would be a good 30 or maybe 15, 20 minute walk ends up being an hour, 2 hours.
Okay. That is
and it's real quick to dehydrate down here, and then you're in brush this thick so you don't get the breeze.
So then have you found people in here who've perished? Yes. And then if we walk down further, we'd see another one?
Well, we can walk down and see a couple more. regardless of what the White House is telling you, we're still releasing most people.
Yes.
Even if Border Patrol is not releasing them, ICE is releasing them. So
they're just releasing them for some court date in the future that might be a decade from now.
So if they're not willing to turn themselves in, see this place, they just took it down. If they're not going to turn themselves in to get let go, there's a reason they're not turning themselves in. It's because they're going to do time because they have some type of criminal history, and most likely criminal history in the United States, probably something pretty vile. There's another good one right there. That's like a Winnie the Pooh hole right there.
It is. Okay, one more time, the Trump wall.
Yeah, so this is the Trump wall right here. And there's actually another down there. It's another 15-foot drop. So this is a levee wall. So even that chain link fence is very effective. But then you can tell the Trump wall because it has that metal barrier on the top. Now this has always been the entrance way. They were building the rest of this wall, but they left that gap open because the earth movers would come in. Obviously they don't fit through there, the cranes, those huge dump trucks. So they made a path for them to go down there. Well, when Biden took office and he put a stop to border wall funding or border wall construction, not necessarily funding, they left it open. So now you have this gentleman's club that gets pretty busy and people are running in there all times of the day and night. And then I'll show you from, well, we can see it from over here. If you see this brush line right here.
Yes. Okay,
that brush line goes to that levee. So people will jump over that brush line or jump over that levee and get into this brush line. You see that brush line comes here and then it breaks west or breaks east, but it also comes under this culvert. So either they're gonna take this brush line straight to this guy's property or they're gonna go that way.
It just like makes a path right to his property.
And not only that, you have this culvert.
Right.
So they don't even have to expose themselves to, you know, and so they're about neck deep in there. They duck down just a little bit. They're only exposed for a good 2 or 3 seconds on that side and here, but once they get over, there's really not much we can do.
The bus back there, what is it doing?
It's going to pick up people that are in custody.
That bus is going to pick people up. If you're not like a hardened criminal, you can get in that bus and get out of here and go to whatever the next major city is.
They're gonna release you into the country.
The people who are going to this open air bar in the oldest township in Texas, right there, these are bad guys.
Yeah, they're trying to avoid detection.
Guys.
Yeah, they're trying to get away. Yeah, this is the Anzalduas port of entry. It's just a vehicle bridge. It's not a pedestrian bridge. Reason being, it's almost 2.5, 3 miles long. So it's like 1.5 miles on the U.S. side, and then probably equal that or more on the Mexican side. So they don't allow pedestrians. But yeah, we're gonna go down. We're gonna parallel it down south and hit the one of the popular not crossing points, but marshalling points. And here, if you look at it, you know, even if you were, once that wall went up right there, and this tells you that walls work. Once that wall went up there, this area was nothing but drug smuggling at one point, before that small wall went up. Because they would mule the drugs up through here and then get into a neighborhood. Right. And then every morning, 7:30, and every afternoon, 4:30 during school zone time, they would throw it in a vehicle, initiate a pursuit. We can't pursue in school zones, obviously, for safety reasons. I mean, we can, but we don't.
Right.
And once that wall went up, there was only one way in, one way out. Either you're going to try and lug this thing up over a wall, or you're going to have to go through the main entrance. And that turned this area from all drugs to nothing but people. So it does work. Regardless of what people will say, it will slow them down, but it'll slow you down just enough for me and my friends to get there.
And for the school to not have to deal with it.
And that's like what we were talking about earlier. If we're going to play this game, we want to play it where it's suited to our advantage, where it's safe for the community, it's safe for me, it's safe for the guy that I'm chasing, but mainly the community. We don't want to have this stuff out there where somebody can get hurt. Now this right here, I saw this yesterday. You see that in the middle of the road?
Mm-hmm. It's a shoe, right?
Yeah, it's a little kid shoe.
And so the river is?
From here, it's about 1 mile south.
Okay.
And then it curves up.
All right. So if they were just walking across that, they're just walking through hot desert jungle. I don't even know what you call, just brush.
Yeah, brush country. It's always a crapshoot out here walking in the high grass. Usually if you're near a rattlesnake, you'll hear it. Sometimes you just step on it, you know. We've had some guys with, I mean, we have snake chaps that most people wear, but not everybody. And we've had some guys that get either, I know one guy that got hit in the calf, and it was a pretty long recovery. Another guy got hit on the heel of his hand, on the palm, right by the thumb. You know, the other thing that, I don't know if I told you this already, but this has always stood out with me, and I had a conversation with, not the mayor now, but the previous mayor, and he was saying how, you know, the valley's safe and there's no problems. And I said, look, I'm not saying it's not safe, because it's a fairly safe place. I said, but there are problems. And I say, we have cartel problems. We have cartel problems immediately to the south. We have some in town with us. And he goes, no, that's just a myth. And I said, okay, well, where are our waterfront homes? And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, if you look at any city, major city, small city, even a good-sized town, and you have a natural waterway, whether it's a river, a lake, an ocean, even a good-sized creek, you're going to have $1 million homes on that waterway. We have the Rio Grande River, and you can't say it's because international boundary, because the Detroit River, hell, the Great Lakes International. So where are $1 million homes? How come we don't have them? Because people don't feel safe. And if they felt safe, we'd be going through a rich neighborhood right now. But we're not.
What did he say to that?
He didn't respond. But I mean, you would think about it. I mean, it's not like the guy that owns this is making a killing off his crops.
Right.
You know?
No, he's not at all. And he doesn't have a house set up here by the river.
The only thing you'll see are fishing shacks. But the people don't stay there at night.
Because they know something's going on.
Yeah. And that's, I think, to me, that speaks volumes is, where's our $1 million homes? So normally this is the route that they'll walk up, and they'll either come up this way or they'll go up under the bridge. I'd go up under the bridge, but I don't think he'd make it in that, so. But if we see, you know, but like I said, it's the time of day. I don't think anybody's coming anyway. It's already getting to 100, so.
Yeah, it is hot.
DPS put this up. I think it's good and it's bad. I mean, it keeps you from going that way, but at the same time, if you want to cross it, you're going to cross it, and now you got all kinds of cuts that I got to deal with, and that stuff is nasty. The way those barbs are, they go in and they don't come out, right? Now, see, that's another thing we're looking at, right? Like, we have Border Patrol doing this job. Border Patrol from all over the country is helping out. And we have some air marshals. We have some U.S. marshals. We have DHS that's helping out. Even some customs guys off the bridge and ICE are coming to help out. And then you have federal fish and wildlife. And you have state fish and wildlife. Then you have DPS that's local. DPS statewide. And then you have the Texas National Guard. And you have, you know, Florida, Idaho, all these other National Guards that have come in to help us. And then we have Florida State Police that have come in to help us, which is great. We appreciate it. But at the same time, just with that, we can't even solve this problem of people turning themselves in. That doesn't even include the ones that are trying to get away.
Well, that's because our country isn't supposed to have this many people coming across the border. The law doesn't allow for it, and there's a reason for it, and part of it is the personnel and the manpower to be able to handle it.
Yeah, and if they would make this a legislative fix, and they would say, hey, we're going to follow the law, and if we don't like this law, we're going to change this law, but we're going to follow whatever law there is, then our people, and even the people that are coming to help us, can shore up the gotaways, whether it's people and drugs coming north or guns and money going south. We could secure this thing. And then once they secure it, then you start doing immigration reform. Because a lot of people, what I hear, at least, this is one of the things that stood out when President Trump ran back in, 16, right? He was for immigration reform after securing the border, which makes the most sense.
Right.
Because in '86 Reagan did amnesty, and they never reformed the system. And so, to me, I think it is my sink is overflowing. So what am I going to do? Am I going to mop, or am I going to turn off the water?
Right.
I'm going to turn off the water. But with immigration reform first, you're just mopping. But there's more water coming down. You're never going to fix the problem.
Right.
And so that's what these guys need to do, is turn off the damn water, secure it, then figure out what they want to do. Everybody stays, everybody goes, a mix of some sort. Who cares? Just get it done. Now we're at the Anzalduas. It's a county park. That's the Rio Grande River. And DPS and game wardens, they launch their boats out of here. But the interesting part is this park is closed because Catholic Charities has taken it over as a migrant shelter. So our county residents don't get to enjoy their park, but yet less than a mile from here, there's a park owned by the Diocese of Brownsville, which owns Catholic Charities. So they don't use their park to house migrants. They use our park, and now our park can't be used by our taxpayers, which to me, I guess you got to put people somewhere, but it does a disservice to our taxpayers that they can't use all this stuff
in
here.
your local community.
Yeah.
What happens in this park today, and what used to happen? Has it changed?
This is, it's you see it. It's a nice little park. Normally during the week it's slow. On the weekends people come through. Family barbecues. Easter is real big out here. Kids playing in the water. There's a boat dock. People get on jet skis.
And I see people in the water over there.
Yeah, and the Mexican side has a park as well.
Okay.
Especially Easter, it's a big deal down here. But now the park is closed. The park is closed to the general public. Down towards the back, that yellow fencing, you can see where Catholic Charities has come in and I guess got permission from the county to use the park. So now our local families can't use the park. So.
All right, and then do people try to cross here?
Yeah, this is a big crossing point for both people that are turning themselves in and trying to get away. If they're turning themselves in, they'll swim across right here or right through here and try and turn themselves into some law enforcement in the park if they can find any. And then if they go a little upriver, you see the brushy areas, they'll cut through there, and those are the ones that are trying to get away.
And it'll take you back over where we were, right?
And it's a real thick, real densely vegetated area. It's very easy to get turned around, lost. Unfortunately, it's sad to say, but you could be less than half a mile away from a river, but the dehydration will still get you.
Is it deep here? If you can't swim, can you get across here? In
this area, it's maybe waist, chest deep up in here, but further down this way, in the good, we call it the good water, it's between 8, 15, 20 feet deep.
Okay.
And there are areas a little farther upriver where it gets even deeper than that, 70, 80 feet. So it is, the average in this area is 20 feet.
Okay.
The scary part about this river is obviously the current's always going to come down river, but the light breeze we have always pushes up river, so the surface, it looks very, very calm, but underneath it's moving pretty quick, and there's a lot of obstructions. There's picnic tables, there's cars, believe it or not, there's all kinds of stuff that you can get your foot caught on and never surface.
Well, and I see it, I don't know if the video camera will pick it up, but I see it kind of turning and spinning. It's going this way and that way at the same time. Well, this has been a really good tour. It's really hot right now. It's 100 degrees, right?
Yeah.
Probably over 100 degrees at this point. At this time of day, normally there are not a lot of crossings, correct?
Yeah, normally you're not going to have a lot of crossings in the heat of the day. Usually early morning, late evening. If they're turning themselves in, they'll come in where it's daylight. They can see where they're going because they're trying to turn themselves in. They don't want to turn an ankle or step on a snake or something. But once it gets dark, then from nightfall to about 4 or 5 in the morning, it's just constant people running. So,
and that makes it gives them the cover of darkness, and it's cooler, but it also, I would imagine, makes it even tougher in those deep, dense, brushy areas to move through.
Yeah, and it's with the heat, it's still hot here at night. Not this hot obviously, but when you're in the brushy areas, the wind's not moving, and it's easy to get lost. It's easier to get lost at night than it is during the day because you don't have the sun to guide off of. So
Right. We covered a lot of topics. Is there anything that you want to mention that I maybe did not ask you?
You know, I think we talked about it a little earlier. I think what people need to realize is these crossings affect us in the short term, 3 or 4 or 5 days. But after that, they get released in the country. They don't affect us anymore. It affects the rest of the country. It affects the Floridas. It affects the North Carolinas. It affects the Wisconsins, the Idahos, Kansas, because they don't stay here. They go to the rest of the country. Same with the drugs. We have some drugs down here, but for the most part, we don't have an opioid problem. We don't have a meth problem down here. So people need to wake up and realize that this is not our problem as much as it is their problem. It's going to affect them much greater in the long term than it will affect us.
And you have always contended that if we would enforce the law, if we enforce the law, these problems would not exist.
Yeah. You know, mandatory detention, mandatory removal will stop the beacon effect, the we'll leave a light on for you effect. You know, tell people to stop beckoning people here. You start sending them back. It shuts down that pull factor, and then we start reforming this system. But enforce the laws that are on the books. And if for some reason Congress feels that they don't like the laws that are on the books, change them. Right. And if you don't change them, we still have to enforce them. So the ball's in their court.
And if you change the law, but you don't enforce any of the changes, it doesn't matter anyway.
Exactly.
We have to have faith that they're going to be enforced for any of them to matter, to the people who are coming across, to the citizens of the country, to you who put your life on the line every single day.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, if they're not going to enforce it, then, well, what's the point of being here? So they need to do their job. If they want to fix this problem, if they care, if anybody in Washington, D.C. cares about what happens to these children throughout this journey, then they'll fix this problem. But if they don't care, we can just continue to ignore it. And right now, it looks like they don't care.
No, not at all. It's a terrible thing. And it harms these kids, it harms the kids in America who wind up being harmed from the drugs that are happening in their families. It is a bad situation. I hope that our conversation today and the other conversations I've been having along the border help shed light on what's happening so that we can elect people who will work to fix this problem. Well, Chris Cabrera, thank you so much for showing me the border today in McAllen, Texas, and thank you for your time, not just today, but over the last decade, getting to know me and explain to me what's happening in this border. Thank you so much for your time today.
Not a problem. I'm always available if you need me.
Thank you.
The Jenny Beth Show is hosted by Jenny Beth Martin, produced by Kevin Mooneyhan, and directed by Luke Livingston. The Jenny Beth Show is a production of Tea Party Patriots Action. For more information, visit teapartypatriots.org.
If you like this episode, let me know by hitting the like button or leaving a comment or a 5-star review. And if you want to be the first to know every time we drop a new episode, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications on whichever platform you're listening to. If you do these simple things, it will help the podcast grow, and I appreciate it very much.